Hello, welcome to the Jazz Ranch, hip cats, groovy chicks, finger popping daddies. Welcome to the Jazz Ranch. I'm your ultra-dominant ego man. You can call me Mr. Ego if you like. And you know, the KH, one of his friends actually wrote to him and said, he signed, he says, hello, Professor Jazz. Well, the KH heard that. He said, wow, that went to his head. He said, yeah, I'm going to call myself Professor Jazz from now. Now I said, what makes you think you're Professor Jazz? He said, well, I paid my dues. He said, what do you mean you paid your dues? What is that all about? You paid your union dues, you paid your AAA dues, you paid, Social Security, whatever, you paid it. No, it means you live your life. You had hard times, you struggled through it, you tried to make something of your life. You had to suffer through it to get to where you are today. Well, I said, hey, what do you know? You're not knowing what you're talking about. I've done all that. I did that 2 years ago. Anyway, wait a minute. He doesn't like... Anyway, I might have to call him Professor Jazz from now on. He's coming up He's got the dog with him, the attack dog. But no, he's got the horse with him, too. I got to split. I'll see you. That's funny. The ultra-dominant man, he introduces me, and now he thinks I should be called Professor Jazz. Well... he questions whether I've earned that. Well, write to me and I'll tell you my story, but I don't care. But maybe it's better than KH. So if you like that title, then I'll take that if I'm worthy of it. And I really appreciate the fact that 100,000 people have become my subscribers now. And they're all over the world, and this is amazing and everything. But I have a lesson for you this evening based on the concept of secondary dominants and using them in a minor blues and showing you how a simple minor blues works and how you can add secondary dominants and how they're used in a lot of songs, not only the standards but jazz tunes, secondary dominants. So here we go with a minor blues. Starting out, I realize that people who are beginners and people who are intermediates and people who are advanced may be listening to this. So I try to create a compromise. I try to make it move along, and if you need to slow it down, please use that wheel on the bottom of the video. And I also have a video on this. Just write to me. I have a video on this that I can send the link to you that describes how to slow down the video. But I want to keep it moving along. I'm going to be talking about secondary dominants, and they are dominant seventh chords that are not the primary dominant, which is always the 5 of the key that you're in, but they're chords within that key. Say you're in C, and you play D minor 7, in which that chord is altered to become major. Now it is a dominant 7th, so that's a secondary dominant, whereas the 5 chord is the primary dominant. So if I went to the 3 chord and then I altered it, so a secondary dominant chord has been altered, and the purpose of it is to give tension to move to a chord that it leads to. In other words, E7 wants to move to A minor or A major. In other words, it's a way of creating more tension and having more interest in the song harmonically. So I'm going to be talking about blues. Now, a very simple blues in the key of C major would have 12 measures, of which the first 4 measures are C7, followed by the 1 chord, in other words, followed by the 4 chord, which is F7. I'm altering them to be dominant 7ths because that's the blues sound, the dominant 7ths. The blue note of the flat 7. And then 2 measures of the 1 chord, and then 2 measures of the 5 chord, and then back to the 1 chord again. Now you can have variations of this. You can have 4 measures of C7 going 2 measures of F7 back to C7. Then you can go G7 for 1 measure, F7, or the 4 chord for 1 measure, then the G7 for 1 measure, and then the G7 again to set up the next chorus. And there's multiple variations of that. So in minor now, it's just that the C7 now becomes C minor 7 or C minor 6. You could call it, or just C minor for the 1 chord. For the 4 chord, it's F minor, back to C minor for the, and now instead of going to the 5 chord there, usually in a minor blues you're going to go to the 2, which would be half diminished, or you're going to go to the flat 6, because see, here's the scale. So there's an A flat in the scale of C minor. It relates to E flat major, so it has 3 flats. Relative minor to E flat major is C minor. So C minor has the same key signature as E flat, which is 3 flats. E flat, A flat, B flat. So in the scale starting on C would be E flat, A flat, B flat, C. So now when you play the D chord, you have to have that A flat in there. So it's half diminished. Then when you go to the G chord, it's like that, or you could make it a flat 9, like have it like that, with that A flat in there, back to the C minor. Now I'm going to give you an example in a very simple song called Equinox by John Coltrane, in which we use very simple chord structure. Then I'm going to show you how to apply the secondary dominants and talk about how they function. So now the chords and the chord progression you have in Equinox is 4 measures of C minor, 2 measures of F minor, 2 measures of C minor. Now here it goes to A flat 7. Now that's really a tritone substitute of the 2 chord, which would be half diminished, minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7 flat 5. If you go up a flat 5 from there, there's a perfect fifth, there's a flat 5, and make that a dominant chord, there's your chord. So it goes like this. And now that D natural, of course, is in the scale. The A flat chord is an altered, it's a tritone substitute. Now it becomes like a flat 5 of that chord, which is the interesting thing about that melody, is you have that voicing, that particular note against the A flat chord. It's a flat 5. Voice it like this. Otherwise, you pretty much have the C minor pentatonic scale through there, but then you have that odd note there, which gives it such interest because now it's different. It's not in the scale. It's in the scale of C minor, but it's not in that, doesn't fit that chord. It becomes a sharp 11 or a flat 5 of the chord. Here in my book I have 2 pages of the theory of secondary dominants, in other words, how they work within a diatonic system.
Here it explains it in theory, as well as showing the alterations and how these alterations lead to other chords in order to create harmonic movement within a song. And then I show how it relates in the cycle of fifths. And then I show you the song Just in Time and Don't Blame Me, and how, in other words, I try to give you examples. I give you theory and I give you examples, and then you see the practical application of the theory in a song, and then I give you the song. In this case, I'm going to give you a blues song, but I want you to see how this is explained in my book. And it's in book 1, so it's pretty much an important concept that you want to learn early on, and I'm going to explain how it works in detail. Just to explain how secondary dominants work, or how we apply them to songs, if we take the diatonic system of scale tone sevenths, these are the chords that function within a key. So C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, B half diminished 7th, C major 7. So if we go to the 3 chord and we say alter that to major, it becomes a secondary dominant, because now it's a dominant 7th chord. The dominant 7th chord is a major triad with a minor 7th interval. If I went up to the 6th chord, which is minor 7, and I raise that 3rd, now I have a major triad with a minor 7th interval. Now, what do these secondary dominants do? They create movement, harmonic movement or tension, because it has the tritone in there, which is unstable. That tritone wants to move to here or to here, wants to move in like that. So that E7 wants to resolve to A minor like that. And in the song Just in Time, that's exactly what happens. It goes like this: C major 7 goes to the 3 chord here now, but altered to become a secondary dominant. Where does it resolve to? To the A7. Now that becomes a secondary dominant that wants to resolve to where? D minor, right? Or D major. So you have a series of secondary dominants there, from C to E7 to A7 to D7, you know. You can play it like that. So I'm not going to show you how I'm using these in the blues to transform the Equinox concept of a simple blues into a more complex blues, minor blues, which is more interesting to play on and has more things going on harmonically within it. Here we go. Now on the C minor blues that I wrote, I wanted to have some more interesting chords in there, so I used the secondary dominant. Now, first chord is C minor. Rather than staying on C minor for like 4 measures, in the second measure I went to the secondary dominant, which in this case is a G7. That's actually the primary dominant, but you can think of it as the secondary dominant because it's been altered. You know, it should be minor. So I've altered it to have that leading tone. So I can put a 2 in front of that, which would be half diminished, and that'll take me back to the C minor. Now on the 4th measure, that 3rd measure, C minor, on the 4th measure I'm going to be approaching an F minor chord. So now I can alter the C minor chord to C dominant. So I use that to approach the F minor chord, or I could also use its tritone substitute, go up to G flat 7. So I use both actually. I use the C7, then I use the tritone substitute up there, the G flat 7, and then to the F minor. I might have voiced it differently, but I go to the F minor there. Same thing now on the F minor. Instead of playing 2 measures of F minor, I'm going to put that 5 of C minor again to approach it. Then after that, I'm going to put in an A7. Why is that? Well, because I'm thinking of it as 5 of D minor. So I'm altering the A minor now. Yeah, so now I used an alteration, that a secondary dominant that isn't even in the scale. I put it in there because I just like that sound. of this A approaching the A flat. Gives me something else to play on. Like that. So I like that A7 in there. That's an A7 with augmented. So it's built on a root that doesn't even exist in the scale of C minor. So I've altered the A flat. You could think of it as altering the A flat, raising it a half step, and then making it dominant form. So that's another secondary dominant. So I have the secondary dominants of the 5, which could also be thought of as the primary dominant. I have the C7 approaching the F minor. I have the G7 again approaching the C minor. Then I have the A7 approaching the A flat 7. And then that A flat 7, of course, is the 6th chord, but dominant. And then G7. So there you have a more interesting chord progression, particularly for playing jazz on a minor blues. So what you end up with here by adding secondary dominants is you have a more interesting chord progression on which to improvise. You have more different scales you can use, and I can go into that in another video, but it allows you to have a much more interesting way of playing on a minor blues and some little tricks in there. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for joining me this evening, signing off from the Jazz Ranch. And I want to leave you with a quote. And I want you to write to me. Please write to me. I love to hear from you. The quote comes from Victor Hugo. He said this: "Music expresses that which cannot be said and on which it is impossible to be silent." Swing loose. See you next time. Bye-bye.